Hi. Hi.
Hey.
You trying to say hi?
Hi. Hi, Les.
Hello.
Hello.
Livari says hello to everybody. Yeah.
All right, let's just give everyone like 30 seconds. It's 6:29. Thank you everyone for joining our meeting this evening. We will get started shortly. Rami, you want to kick us off? 6:30 now.
Sure. So welcome everybody to the March Youth Education and Libraries Committee meeting. Short agenda today. We're going to be discussing 3K pre-K admissions. We understand that the deadline for pre-K, I believe, is passed last month, but I believe everything that we're going to talk about is still relevant to the community and to 3K parents. In the past month, Mayor Adams lifted school mask mandate for pretty much everyone. Everyone under 5 can take off their masks if COVID cases remain low starting April 2nd. But for the most part, very much a wide range of people masking, unmasking. COVID cases are on the rise again, but thankfully deaths and serious hospitalizations are still low. But schools are continuing to listen to mayoral guidance surrounding COVID, surrounding masks. So anything else, Tayana?
No, I think we can turn it over to our guest speaker. We are honored to be joined this evening by Deja Thomas, who is with the New York City Department of Education. Deja is the 3K pre-K admissions project manager, and we are excited to have her join us this evening to talk to us a little bit about understanding the 3K application process. So I will turn it over to you, Deja. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Not a problem at all. Can everyone see my screen okay?
We can.
Okay, great. So like it was stated earlier, the pre-K application closed this past Friday, but we'll talk about for families who missed the deadline, how they can still participate in admissions. So for 3K, all families are eligible to apply the year their child turns 3. And for pre-K, families are eligible for admissions the year their child turns 4. So this is generally a synopsis of what our admissions process looks like. In the fall, we encourage families to explore their options and start creating a My Schools account, and they begin to search for schools and programs. In the winter, families can submit their applications online with My Schools, or they can submit over the phone or in person at a Family Welcome Center. The Family Welcome Center is now an available option. It wasn't the last year and a half due to the pandemic. In the spring, that is when families find out their pre-K and 3K results, and this is a time where they accept their offers and works directly with schools to register. And in the summer, if applicable, families can receive waitlist offers from programs. So 3K and pre-K is serviced in a mixed delivery method. So that means that we have various different options across New York City that offer the same DOE 3K or pre-K. So for 3K and pre-K, your options are zone district schools, non-zone district schools. So district schools, again, are New York City public elementary schools. Pre-K centers, which are DOE school buildings that only house the grades 3K and or pre-K in them, so nothing K and above. New York City Early Education Centers, which are community-based organizations contracted and partnered with the DOE to offer the same 3K and pre-K that one would find at a district school or a DOE pre-K center. And then a 3K only option are family childcare networks, which are home-based programs. And these are programs in a licensed childcare provider's home, and they service infant and toddlers to 3-year-olds. So it's important for families to understand the different priorities their child may have when applying. So families may have priority to programs or schools in their district, a program or a school where their sibling is currently enrolled, or if they are currently enrolled in a school themselves, they may have a current student priority. For children born at any point in 2018, so that's January 1st through December 31st, they are eligible to participate in pre-K admissions for the next school year. So that's beginning in September of 2022. Again, the pre-K application closed this past Friday. All applications that were submitted by the March 28th deadline are processed as on-time applications. The admissions process is not first come, first served. So it doesn't matter if you submitted an application the day it opened in comparison to this past Friday. As long as you apply by the deadline, it is treated the same based on admissions priorities like everyone else. Again, if a family missed a deadline, they can still participate in admissions by joining waitlists right now on myschools.nyc. They can create a MySchools account and add themselves to waitlists. Or for families who haven't missed a deadline and maybe they want to express interest in other programs, they can also join the waitlist of those programs that they didn't include on their application. For children born in 2019, again, that's any point in 2019, so January 1st through December 31st, they're eligible to participate in 3K admissions beginning in September of 2022. The 3K application is still open and the deadline to apply is April 14th, so we still have about 2 or 3 weeks left. All applications submitted by the deadline are also processed as on-time applications. And again, the admissions process is not first come, first served. However, unlike pre-K, we cannot guarantee that all 3K applicants will be made an offer due to limited seat availability. So again, the 3K application is still open and families can apply in one of 3 ways. They can do it online at MySchools, and we offer translation support online where the entire website translates in 10 languages, including English. We have Arabic, Bangla, Chinese, English, French, Haitian Creole, Korean, Russian, Spanish, or Urdu. Families can also apply by phone by calling 718-935-2009. An interpretation is available in over 200 languages. And then, of course, they can apply in person at family welcome centers throughout the city. So again, a reminder that the pre-K application has closed and families can still participate if they missed the deadline or wanted to express interest in other programs they didn't include on their initial application through waitlists. So just wanted to share some additional resources. Common different areas of the DOE that families have questions about are transportation, special education, English language learners, and health. So these are their websites. I work for the Office of Student Enrollment, so we handle the admissions aspect of it, so getting your child into school and facilitating the admissions process. But any other area, unfortunately, I won't be able to assist with as much, as these are just common sites that we typically hear from families. So just wanted to share that. And if you wanted to get in touch or have more questions, again, you can explore program options at myschools.nyc through our 3K and pre-K directories. And there's also kindergarten directories, middle school. So the entire process, 3K through 12th grade. If you have any questions, you can always give us a call at 718-935-2009. Or you can email us at esenrollment@schools.nyc.gov, which is how most families get in contact with us. To learn more about 3K and pre-K admissions respectively, you can visit the websites at nyc.gov/pre-K or nyc.gov/3K. And again, as a final reminder, the pre-K application is closed, but the 3K application is still open. And that is my very short and brief presentation. So I can stop sharing my screen, but I wanted to pause here to see if you all had any questions for me.
Thank you, Deja. Very helpful. I would like to open it up to members of the public first who have, please, if you could limit it to questions that are specific to Deja's presentation and the topic she presented on, and then I'm happy to open it up to members of the committee and the board. So if we could unmute Judy Schneider, please.
Thank you for coming. That was a very concise presentation. I now know more about it than I did before. Couple of questions. One, is there a center to sign up in Community Board 8?
So in terms of a family welcome center, I would believe Community Board 8. I normally operate based off district. So if someone on the board can tell me what district
District
specific-
2.
District 2.
Two.
Okay. So I believe the nearest family welcome center to District 2 is going to be on the west side. I'm going to pull up the site right now so I can tell you what that is. Okay, so in Manhattan, servicing districts 1, 2, and 4 is going to be 333 Family Welcome Center. I believe this is somewhere, let me look this up because this is not helpful. 333 7th Avenue, sorry, on the 12th floor, room 1211. And again, you don't have to, you can go to any family welcome center. You don't have to go to the family welcome center like assigned to your district. It's just going to probably be a little bit more efficient because those are people, of course, they know more about that area, but you can go to any family welcome center. The other location is going to be servicing districts 3, 5, and 6, and that's going to be in Harlem at 388 on West 125th Street.
Thank you. One other question. So you have all these children from District 8, because that's where Community District 8, where you are now, which is 59th to 69th from Central Park to the river, including Roosevelt Island. So we've applied for pre-K, 3K. How do you go about deciding what child gets into what program? The thing that I've heard most from parents is that they couldn't get into a spot in our community board district, and they were offered a spot for a very young child down at Battery Park City, let's say. And
So
of course, that's a very difficult for a young one to travel that far.
So offers are made based off admissions priorities, seat availability, and the choices parents list on the application. I'm going to start with 3K first. As I mentioned in the presentation, 3K seats are not guaranteed and they are limited. District 2 and most of, I guess, Southern Manhattan, Districts 2 and 3, this year is its first year of having 3K programs that are available, that all families are eligible to attend. Previously, they did have 3K options, but these, again, 3K options were there for families who met income and need eligibility criteria. So as a result, for 3K in certain districts, so in Manhattan, that would be districts 1, 2, and 3, because districts 4, 5, and 6 were full 3K districts, we cannot guarantee an offer to all applicants. So what we do, and now I'm going to bring it back to pre-K. If we're unable to make a child an offer to a choice listed on their application for pre-K, then because we do guarantee that every child who does apply to pre-K by the deadline will receive an offer, they will be made an offer to the nearest school to their home that has availability. This does not mean that it's the closest school to you. It means that it's the closest school that has an available seat and that can accommodate your child. So for pre-K, generally, a parent wouldn't be going that far because there are enough seats across the city. For 3K though, sometimes that means like, okay, well, maybe we do have seats somewhere, but it's further away. If we can accommodate and make an offer, that's what we try to do. In some cases, we cannot make offers to all families, but if we can, we're gonna try. And sometimes though, that offer is further away, is for 3K, I would say especially, that it's going to be less of a case for pre-K. And again, that area, I would say there is a lot of high demand. Some families choose to, not put a lot of options on their application, and that does impact. The less choices you list on your application, the lower the chance you're going to get something listed on your application. I would say a common thing that we hear in our inbox is, if I only list one school, do you have to make my child an offer to that one school? And we don't, because it's based off admissions priorities and seat availability. If there's more applicants than seats, we cannot accommodate everyone. at that one school, of course, for pre-K, but everyone will get an offer, but we don't guarantee anything. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Vanessa, I'm going to skip over and go to members of the public first, if that's okay. Thank you. Can we unmute Boaz, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
So I'm on the road. I joined a little bit late. So first of all, I need help with the translation between districts and community board. So my question is only on the community board 8. I mean, and I asked, do we have statistics specifically about the chances regarding the 3K program? How many, I mean, what's the chance to get into the program if you are in the community board A? The same thing about if you are in a pre-K, what's the chance to get the place that you selected in the list? I hope the question makes sense.
The question does make sense, but community boards are not a factor in our admissions process. Like, we take a look at what district your child lives in, and if you're applying to like a zone school, like what zone you're in. But community boards, that's not a factor in admission. So it's just not a factor. So I won't have anything beyond that. We also don't have any information of what chances in terms of, again, for pre-K, everyone who applies by the deadline will be made an offer. We don't guarantee offers to any specific school because, again, it's based off seat availability, admissions priority, and the individual choices parents list on their applications. And because those things change year to year, I don't have any hard statistics to give you. And for 3K, again, we don't guarantee offers at all. If in certain school districts, we do have enough seats for every child who applies in that district. District 2 is not one of those districts. So I can't tell you how many kids in District 2 are able to make offers. Again, we're in our first year of 3K, this current school year for District 2, and this upcoming admissions process will be year 2. So it just depends on the amounts of programs in those areas and who we can accommodate. There's a lot of demand for 3K and not enough seats. 3K in and of itself, I believe, is only in its 5th year. So it is still growing in comparison to pre-K that has been around and has been centralized for quite some time.
Yeah, and then I was just going to jump in, Boaz, to answer, I mean, I think part of your question. So community board, unfortunately, community board districts and the lines don't directly match up to DOE districts, nor do they necessarily match up to the districts of our elected officials at the city, state, or federal level, right? So none of that matches to make things really uncomplicated. So Manhattan Community Board 8 represents the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island. District 2 of the Department of Education encompasses parts of, for example, Community Board 6, which is a little bit south of us. And so it makes the data a little challenging. I think, Deja addressed the data that the DOE has that exists by school district. So it's even more sort of nuanced to get that specific data just for our CB8 district, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure. If we could unmute Carla next, and then we should go to Vanessa, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I have just a couple quick questions. One is, do all the schools have the priority of low income? And the second question is, my understanding was that they were trying to work towards guaranteeing 3K for all districts by 2023. And if that is the case, how close are we? I'm assuming that this would be the year to really make that push to get that to happen. So what things are being done in terms of outreach to programs to help build capacity to expand those availability of placements. I was just curious. That might be a more broader question, but I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, so I believe the target goal that you are referring to was the target pre-pandemic. And I'm going to be honest with that. So those types of decisions, like this all lives with funding, right? And in order for 3K to be full scale, that's relying on state and federal funding. And most of that, your question actually lives with early childhood. They're the ones who go through the RFP process, so getting new programs, securing seats. I want to be clear that the Office of Student Enrollment, we fill seats and we facilitate the admissions side of things. But in terms of who gets seats and where those seats come from, that does not live with our office at all. That comes from a completely different office in the DOE. So I can't be too helpful there, but I do know that that original goal was pre-pandemic. And based off what I have been told, I do not think that that's going to be the reality this upcoming year, because we probably would have had more notice about it, to be quite frank. Your first question, so admissions. Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about admissions priorities because our website, schools.nyc.gov/3K, has a very detailed instruction about like admissions priority and how offers are made. So I would encourage anyone who has deep questions about that to visit the website, because you're probably going to get your question answered there than we have time allotted for. But to answer your question, there's no priority based off income. So there are different types of 3K and pre-K seats. There are full day seats that all families are eligible for. The only requirement is that you're eligible based off birth year. So for pre-K this year, that'd be 2018, 3K 2019, and that you live in the 5 boroughs. Those are the only 2 requirements for full day seats. There are extended day and year seats, and families who are applying for this type of seat will answer certain questions on the application that families who are just applying to full day programs will never see. And these are going to be questions regarding income, family size, etc., to determine whether, it doesn't determine because that lives with the child care application, but it serves as more of a pre-screen for us to see who is likely eligible for this type of seat and who's likely ineligible. And if we do not think that you're likely eligible, we will not make you an offer for that type of seat. That does not mean that you can't get that type of seat. If you do feel like you're eligible, you can complete the child care application and they can make that determination. But most of our families that we deem likely ineligible are likely ineligible. And those seats are free or low cost for extended day and year. And there's also 3K or pre-K Head Start seats. Head Start, a lot of people are familiar with it. It's a federally granted program, and families have to meet those income and need those Head Start federal requirements in order to be eligible for that type of seat, but that seat is completely free. So there is no admissions priority based off income and need, but there are certain types of seats that you do have to meet those eligibility requirements. So then once you are found likely eligible, then the standard admissions priorities follow. So you have to meet that threshold first. If we don't think you're eligible, then your admissions priority is irrelevant because you're not eligible, because your child can't sit in that type of seat if they're not eligible. So I hope that answers your question. But again, the website does have a wealth of information regarding this. And you could also email us directly at ES Enrollment, and I'll be happy to go into more detail.
And just, Deja, a follow-up question to that, because I think this is, has evolved. And obviously, like, I appreciate you contextualizing the changes in funding as a result of COVID, but I think also for like parents in the community that feel like there also has been an influx of a lot of funding as a result of the pandemic, right? Recognizing that much of that money has to go towards COVID related things. It is true though, to the sort of the crux of the question that was asked, that the initial plan to roll out 3K and pre-K was actually predicated on prioritizing communities that were high need and therefore low income, more likely to be low income or working class, and therefore not necessarily the district that we're in. That is correct. Right?
That is correct. So again, District 2.
Right. We didn't make that. No, of course. So I think that's where sort of some of the questioning was. And I think that there was like, I think that there was a lot of support for, right. It was clear that the city and the largest public school system in the country was not going to be able to roll out a plan for 3K pre-K for all at once. And so that the prioritizing made sense. But of course, as you might imagine, obviously recognizing the challenges that COVID has brought, there was also a promise that every child would have a seat by 2023. And so I think that's sort of, I just want to acknowledge sort of what Boaz said, but also just, these are complaints, call it complaints or concerns, frustrations that a lot of parents of young children in the community voice to us as a committee and a board fairly often. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Vanessa Aronson, who is a mother of a young child who was just on Zoom with us. If we can unmute.
Although not quite there yet, not quite
Soon.
yet applying. But thank you, Deja. I really appreciate all of the information. Just your answer of that last question was really shows how complex the system is, but sheds a little bit of light into it. Curious if you can speak to any options sort of post offer. So I know you said pre-K is closed already. I'm just curious about like changes that happen throughout the year. So if a family is not satisfied with their placement, if throughout the year something changes with the child, or if a family moves to another part of the city or comes into the city, are there any shifts in terms of enrollment that happen throughout the year?
Yeah, so I want to be clear that if a family moves within the city or throughout the city, okay, so let me back up. After offers are released, if you are considering any other placement for 3K pre-K, that is all done through waitlist. There is nothing, no other placement. You have to let the waitlist play itself out. So you add your child to waitlist, and then you can, be chosen off the waitlist that way. And that is the case for everyone. It doesn't matter what your situation is, it is going to be waitlist. Once waitlist closes, then that is where there's a little bit more nuance there. So if a family moves within the city or to the city, we will support them in trying to find them a placement for pre-K. Again, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the closest school to your home that has an available seat. In terms of like, you get the most options during the admissions process and during waitlist. Once the application closes, it's more so about what school can accommodate your child right now based off your home address. That is generally what it is. In terms of someone being unhappy, it's really more nuanced because there is no transfer process for 3K or pre-K because they're programs. So we talk about them like grades, but they're programs. They're not grades. They're not compulsory schooling. So it depends on what it is. We don't accommodate all transfer requests, but if you email us, if it's like a strenuous situation, right? Like if something is, if something that's like, an allegation, something like that, like we will support the family. But in terms of like transferring for the sake of transferring, no. But that does not mean that you can't email us. It doesn't mean that we will try to support. It really just depends on one-off scenarios. But one thing I can say for sure, families moving, or coming to the city, new to the city, or if their child is not enrolled at all, like they didn't participate at all in admissions or not in any DOE 3K or pre-K program, then we will assist with that. It's a little bit more complicated as to why families just can't up and move because this isn't just public schools that service 3K pre-K. So we have to accommodate all of our different sectors that offer this and be equitable in that way. For 3K, it is more difficult because we don't have seats for everyone. It does not mean that I can't find you a seat. It doesn't mean that we won't support, but I can't guarantee that you're going to get a 3K seat, even if you move, even if you were already moving somewhere else. Because if you move to an area, for example, we have families that do this, like they're sitting in a 3K seat and they move to another part of the city where seats are highly limited. 9 times out of 10, I may not be able to find them a placement, or the placement I do find them is very far away from home and the parents, that's not an option for them. So I'm not going to say it's impossible and it also depends on what part of the year. Like generally, if it's sooner after waitlist close, there's a little bit more availability. This time of the year, it does get a little bit more scarce because we're approaching the end of the school year. But for pre-K, I will always find a seat because there are enough seats citywide. 3K does get a little scarce, and I would say just in my experience in the last 3 years working here, the later and later it gets harder to find something closer to home, depending on what part of the city you live in and what options are just available near you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deja. I think this was extraordinarily helpful. Like I said, it is one of the topics we hear about quite often. There are a multitude of topics we hear about often, but this is certainly one of them. I think I'd love to, have you or perhaps even, we'll follow up with you, a member of recognizing how the DOE works, and there are different offices that handle different parts of this process. It might be helpful for us to have folks on from the other teams that can help, sort of articulate and explain and contextualize, and acknowledging that there's a new chancellor and a new mayor, like what these delays are going to look like, right? So that our community can feel like they know what to prepare for, right? So that like if the timing of this rollout for all kids throughout the city having a seat has shifted, that we have the families in our community have an understanding of when that's happening. But I recognize that is not on you. So, but I appreciate you joining. Thank you so much for giving us your time late in the day. Unless anyone else has questions, we will move the agenda along to old business and new business and any comments from members of the public. But thank you again, Deja. We are extraordinarily grateful for you to take the time to join us this evening.
Not a problem. I do have to hop off, but thank you guys for inviting me, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your meeting and the rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much, Deja.
Thank you.
Bye. So I will, that was the only item on our agenda for this month. I will open it now before we adjourn to any old business items. Please raise your hand if you have old business items. You do not. If there are any new business items or members of the public that would like to have their voices heard, if you could raise your virtual hand, please. I see David Menegon has his virtual hand raised. David, who I believe is a public member of our Veterans Committee on the board. So thank you for joining us, David. Please go forth, and then if we can unmute Carla after David.
All right. Hey, great to see everybody tonight. It was another productive meeting. Thanks for all the work you're doing. I just wanted to briefly ask you to put on the agenda for your next meeting a public hearing for April 28th to talk about the Knickerbocker Grays, which has been in the Park Avenue Armory for over 120 years. They moved up here in 1902. I think many of you on the board have seen the cadets over the years, the decades. And we just got word a couple of days ago from the Conservancy that the Grays need to pack up their things and move out, and that we can't have our weekly 1-hour drills for the children. And I'd like to have a public hearing to discuss the Conservancy saying to evict us, the value that the kids bring into the community. And I've been the commandant for the Grays for almost 25 years now. I predate the Conservancy. I think if you remember back in 2006, I was a big proponent and still am of what the Conservancy has done to fix that building up and make it into a premier space. And they gave a commitment to me and this board in 2006 that the Grays and the other institutions in there would also be preserved. It's very important to preserve the cultural organizations on the Upper East Side, particularly those for children. And I'd like to discuss that. I won't go into too much detail today. We can leave that for next month, but I'd like to put that on to talk about stopping the eviction, having cadets go back into the armory for that 1 hour a week, 4:30 to 6:30. They're on the premises, keeping our space there, discussing the square footage on that, and moving forward. So I also have on the line Adrienne Rogotnik, who's the president of the board. I don't know if she wants to add anything if you have any questions. Adrienne, you there? She's down with her son right now, playing baseball, I think, in North Carolina.
Doesn't look like she's on a baseball field.
No. Driving around a lot. But thank you for having us, and thank you for hearing us. And Dave, I think you pretty much summed up exactly what we're looking to get straightened out.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to add it to the agenda for our meeting next month. And obviously, you're bringing it up as new business, but we want to make sure we give proper appropriate notice for members of the public and of your community, and to show up and participate and speak from the perspective of the cadets and folks that benefit from the program. I think I would just say, as the Youth Education and Libraries Committee, and you being a group that has children that participate in the program, I think I would just say it would be helpful for us to hear next month when you come and when we add this to the agenda, a bit about the youth that participate in the program and sort of the age range. I'm familiar with the program, but the age range, whether they come from our district, where they come from. So
Sure.
to the extent that it can sort of be relevant to that piece, that would be incredibly helpful. And thank you for
Great.
coming and voicing your concern.
Great. Would you like cadets to come and speak as well?
They are always welcome. We love having children come and testify.
Okay.
It doesn't always happen, but
Perfect.
they're
Love
more
to.
than- And
Thank
I
you so much for your time.
You're welcome. I promise we'll make sure that they're early on the speaking roster so that they can make their bedtimes. Great.
And
Thank you
it's
so much.
also important to make sure that you inform the Conservancy so they have an opportunity
We
to,
will.
present their reasoning behind this.
We will. That's why I said it. We have to have sort of public notice, and we will. make sure.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for joining us. Can we unmute Carla, please?
Hi again. I just wanted to voice an idea. I don't know to what extent this is possible, but I have seen this kind of information in other community boards. Is some sort of directory. I mean, I'm looking specifically, obviously, for childcare options and in that realm, but I was just curious if that would be something that the community board could potentially put together. I'm new to this neighborhood. And so, it's sort of been a scramble to even find this kind of information, and it's not really in a centralized place. And so I was just curious if that's something that maybe the community board could potentially look into, potentially sort of bring that information in one centralized place. I mean, I know that would be very helpful to new moms and new parents that are coming into this neighborhood. I don't know what if it's possible, but that would be something I would love to see.
Thank you. I think that let me think through that and talk to the members of the committee. I think what we try to do is sort of not reinvent the wheel. So where there are resources that are available at the Department of Education, and I recognize you were talking about childcare, so I recognize that, as we just heard, that's not necessarily covered by the DOE. So to the extent that we can connect you with government resources that are going to give you the most sort of up-to-date and accurate information, we can do that, but definitely request heard. I'm curious if you can specify, and I apologize because I may have missed this, sort of the age range that you're talking about when you're describing resources for new young families.
I guess it would be 0 to 3. And if it's of interest, I could send you I think it was in Brooklyn. There was a community board that pulled it together, but I can imagine that's very difficult to maintain an updated, to really have the staffing and the resources to keep something like that updated. So I could imagine that it would be a difficult task, but even the names of places like where just sort of it's just really hard for a new parent to find this information. I mean, there's a lot of information on social media and moms groups and things like that, and just word of mouth. But if you're new to the neighborhood, you're not really sure where to go to. It just some sort of resource like that. If someone else could produce it, and then the community board could just post it or something on their link, or a link to it or something like that. But I think it would be something. I think it's something that's needed. So I'm not sure who's responsible for it, but
yeah, it's a very reasonable request, and we are not. Thank you. If you could actually, I'll follow up with you separately. If you could share which Brooklyn Community Board produced that, I'd love to take a look and see how we can, learn from our, fellow community boards. I think, to my original response, that's why I asked the age, because you are absolutely right. Pointing you to DO resources is not helpful because they don't cover 0 to 3. I'm also not a mom. So I'd love to actually hear Vanessa Aronson's perspective on this. I know you've talked about this a lot. And so, but I'm also aware that I'm not so sure there's like a reliable place we can point to people, or that we are the appropriate ones to be providing that information. So I'd love your perspective, Vanessa.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think I'm not entirely sure how we go about it, because you're absolutely right, Carla, there's like nothing And even just sort of Googling in Google Maps, you miss a lot actually, which is kind of surprising. So yeah, I wonder if there could be a way to crowdsource some information. Yeah, why don't we'll do some digging and see what we can do. I think it's a great idea. And I think also the Women and Families Committee, this might be something that maybe we could do in partnership with them. So we'll check with them and see if, because I know I know there was a meeting within the past year on this exact issue on the lack of childcare centers in our neighborhood. So I'll see if they already have done something.
Great. Thank you, Carla. We will definitely follow up on that and make sure we address it at least have a plan. I don't promise a directory by the April. Rami, I don't know if you wanted to share anything else or if anyone else has an interest in speaking. Otherwise, I think we can adjourn.
I have nothing additional. As always, reach out if you have any further ideas for committee meetings or topics you'd like the education committee to discuss. We will for sure address the Knickerbocker raise in April, but besides that, we will be in touch regarding the concerns that were raised tonight. So thank you all. And as you may know, if you've been attending youth and ed meetings in the past, we like short meetings.
Yes, also one thing I forgot to add. We just got notice earlier today that the Manhattan District Attorney High School internship application deadline was extended to March 25th, which is tomorrow. So for anyone who has high school kids in their lives, or if any of you that are on our high school students, they had an earlier deadline. It has now been extended to March 25th. All right.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. See you next month. Take care.